What's up, everybody? This is MJ, and welcome to our Thursday training for this week. I hope you've had a phenomenal and productive week moving towards your dream of owning your shop or your boutique and creating the lifestyle of your dreams. Today's topic is probably going to be a little bit controversial for some people, but I want you to come in here with an open mind and be willing to learn, have a coachable mindset, because I guarantee you will learn something from today. The reason it's going to be controversial is because, and you can see the title right here, I'm telling people that they need to stop buying vendor lists and startup kits when it comes to launching a boutique. And there are people who are resistant to that idea because it seems like a pretty harmless and benign thing to buy or even give someone a vendor list and some type of a startup kit that tells you what you should do or supposedly tells you what you should do to start a successful boutique. Because here's what's true. Most people who want to start a boutique, Black women like you, don't actually know a lot about the business side. Usually you are driven by a desire to take a product that you have created or that you have used and would like to resell to the marketplace. But that doesn't mean that you will automatically know the right things to do and the right things not to do to get that business to be successful. And so naturally, you want all the help that you can get. And a lot of people go to folk that have already launched a successful boutique, who've maybe been in business for a year or two or 10. And sometimes the information that they give you, these people who've already been in business, is one of these vendor lists. And there are also people out here online who are selling these lists of vendors, right? You know, especially if you're selling somebody else's products, you want to know the best people to get them from, to get the best price, to get the best quality and all of that. And so if somebody tells you, hey, I've got a list of vendors I've used and I've vetted these people and it's $500 and you can have the list and you don't have to worry about reinventing the wheel, that can be very tempting and very attractive to a person who's new to the business to want to buy those. And then also the same types of people might be out here selling these startup kits. And what I'm talking about when I say startup kit, it's usually some type of a document or some type of a list. It might be an article. It might be just something that you buy. It might be an ebook or someone saying, here's all the steps and things you need to do over the course of the next year or two if you want to have a successful boutique. That's what a startup kit is. And it claims that it's going to help you to launch your boutique successfully. And what I'm saying today is to stop buying those vendor lists and startup kits. Stop focusing on those things in the early days. And I'm going to talk to you today about exactly why it is so problematic for you to do that. In general, is there anything wrong with a vendor list? Absolutely not. You're going to have, if you don't do anything else, you're going to develop your own list of vendors. And so that is excellent intellectual property to have. Same thing with information about starting a business. There's nothing wrong with it, but we're going to talk about at least 3 reasons. I'm starting out with 3, but it might morph into 4 or even more reasons why having these vendor lists and startup kits when you are in the early stages or when you are at the beginning of starting your business, why it can be so problematic to just go out here and spend $200, $300, $400 on this vendor list or one of these startup kits that you're going to go through. And I guess it's like a checklist of things to start. We're going to talk about those right now. So get in here, share this video. If you know some friends, other Black women who are trying to start a shop or a boutique, share this with them because I guarantee you're going to learn something today. So the first reason why you need to stop buying these vendor lists, these startup kits in the beginning. Actually, I've already thought about a 4th reason, right? But I'm going to make a note and maybe I might blend it in with some of the stuff we're already talking about, but I might have 4. It's going to be 3 or 4 so far. Is because, okay, so in the beginning, when you're starting a business, and especially if you have never owned a business before, and even if you've owned one, maybe you've never had a retail business because they're different from service businesses and they're different from other types of businesses, right? So having a retail business, just because you might have had some other type of little business, or maybe you had a multi-level business or one of those things, if you have not actually had a retail business and you're brand new, you're hoping to simplify the process as much as possible, right? You have a feeling because you're an intelligent woman, you're an adult, you've been out here in the consumer marketplace for years. You have a feeling that there's going to be 1,001 things that you need to do to start a business successfully. And when you think about starting a business, it can be overwhelming. It's usually not the things that you know about that are overwhelming. It's all those things you don't know about, but that are tickling in the back of your mind that you feel like, I should be doing those things. I don't know what those things are. I'm going to ignore them, or I'm just hoping that they'll just come along some kind of way. I'll figure it out as I go. And so what happens is that you can fall prey to oversimplifying the startup process. And as always, I'm talking about a person like most of you who want to start a thriving retail shop, whether it's online or in person, that's actually going to be here 10 or 20 years from now. I'm not talking about a side gig. I'm not talking about, just something you're kind of doing right now to make a little bit of money. Like I know back when I had my first house, I wanted to put some hardwood floors down. And so I ran out and did some side gig work to earn the $1,000 I needed for the flooring. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about setting up a real business like the ones you buy your products that you use from. You want to set up a real business that has marketplace recognition and maybe corners the market on some things. That's what we're talking about here, okay? You run the risk when you see these vendor lists out here for sale, or you see these startup kits, and I'll give this little caveat. Some of this stuff might not be for sale. It could be somebody giving it to you, which is actually at least a pink flag, but it's usually a red flag about the level of quality or value of what you're being given. But let's say they're selling it to you for $500 or more, or maybe even less. You run the risk in the beginning of oversimplifying the startup process, because what I know to be true is that when you are starting out a new business, when you are literally starting from day one, all you have is an idea. The last thing you need is a vendor list. I know that doesn't sound right. I know that seems like it doesn't make sense, but you don't need a vendor list in the very beginning of your business. And there's so many reasons why, but just to simplify that for the purpose of this video, the reason that you don't need a vendor list is because you don't know enough about the business that you are attempting to start to even know what types of vendors you're looking for and what those relationships will look like, what your business looks like from the inside. Before you can reach out to other people, you have to have an idea of where you're going and what you're doing looks like before you even know who you could possibly be buying from. Same with startup. Well, not the same with startup kids. I'm going to talk about that separately. But with the vendor list, it makes it seem like all you have to do, and I see so many people making this mistake, is all I need is to know who to buy from, give me a website, just buy some stuff that I hope the market wants, put some pictures on my website, and go. And I see day after day, year after year, or week after week, month after month, women who have launched their business but have made zero sales or very few sales. They have thousands of people coming to their website, or at least hundreds, and only a handful of sales. But they bought one of these lists, and sometimes what happens with these lists, sometimes the quality of the vendors has not been vetted to your standards. So the person that gave you that vendor list, they might have thought these vendors were okay. They also might have collected the information right off the internet, the same as you can, put it in a document, and now they're selling it to you as this quality list of vendors when they may have not even ever vetted them. And when I say vetted, I'm talking about actually done business with the people on that list. Most people do not do business with dozens and dozens of vendors. Huge corporations, huge, large retail enterprises, they often do, but your typical people out here are not doing business with that many vendors. So when somebody gives you one of these lists or sells you one of these lists with all the contact information and all that, it can seem so tempting to think this is good stuff here. But what was their process of adding the names to the list? And is it going to meet your particular standards? I was talking to somebody not long ago, and they were talking about how they had one of these vendor lists, and yet they began to buy things, and they started to spend money only for the items to come in, and the quality wasn't where they wanted it to be. But it was on one of these vendor lists, and so it seemed like it was going to be okay. But the real issue, and what we're talking about here in number one, is the oversimplification. I cannot tell you If I told you guys this once, I'm telling to tell you over and over again until you believe me. There are 1,001, kind of like 101 Dalmatians, 1,001 things you need to be doing to set up your business for success. There just are. And if you oversimplify it and boil it down to all I need to do is spend $5,000 or $6,000 just buying stuff that my customers might want. You have no idea. You've not talked to them, but you're assuming that they might want these things and slapping it on a website. That's not a business. That's not even a good side gig. That's not even a good side hustle. That's just you bought some stuff and put it on a website. That's not how we start a business. These stores that you buy from, these companies that have nationwide recognition and they have the brand names that you know and they have multiple locations, or even boutiques that have one location or one, a smaller presence because they're more specialized. If they are worth anything, if they are worth their salt to any degree, they are not just jumping out here buying a bunch of stuff and hoping for the best. And if they did start out like that, I guarantee it took them many painful and expensive years to get to the place where they are when you are finally knowing about them and buying from them, because they had to pay for all the mistakes they made by oversimplifying. Now, are there sometimes retail stores that start out with somebody just kind of doing it on, kind of hustling and kind of doing it unprofessional and kind of grow from there? Yes. However, most of you are not willing or not, you're not willing or desirous of spending the amount of time you would have to spend to kind of, skip your way into success. You're not willing to spend that kind of time and that kind of money making all those unnecessary mistakes. Most of you have spent an extraordinary amount of time in your careers, and that's the life that you want to leave behind. The women I talk to, they want to be gone from that life yesterday, which means you have even less time to spend making mistake after mistake after mistake, trying to figure it out because you started out simple. I'm just going to buy some stuff, put it on a website and see what happens. If you got that kind of money and if you got that kind of time to just kind of wing it, more power to you. I'm talking to the people who want to actually have a successful brand, have a successful retail enterprise in the very near future. That means you can't leave it up to this oversimplified, I'm just going to throw some stuff on a random website. And sometimes you're spending, because you oversimplify it and you focusing on the website, you're spending hundreds or thousands of dollars on the website itself. You're spending all this money on inventory that you're just guessing that you'll be able to move, but you have no idea what you're doing from a marketing standpoint. You have no idea how you're going to keep the cash flow moving until you get the recognition. You're just oversimplifying the process. And that's the problem. You make it seem like it's too easy when these people are out here selling these vendor lists. And I told you we're going to talk about the startup kits. That's where we're actually going to go with our second reason that I want you to stop buying these vendor lists and startup kits, is that these startup kits can leave you hanging with a bunch of information but without any knowledge or process of the process or execution on that information. So, online, there are videos. I love top 10 things you should do, or top 10 things you should, places you should visit, or here's the 12 secrets that and the other. And I even use that setup when I'm doing my videos because I love that format because it makes things easy to follow. And so when people see these startup kits, it's like, okay, there's a checklist that if I just do these things, I am going to be able to game the system and have success. And what I hate, okay, there's two things I hate. I hate a list that makes it seem like you can do something super complex just by checking off this list. And the other thing is I hate a template. I hate business plan templates. I hate anything where it's going to say, if you just plug your name and information or your whatever into this, it's going to create something that's specialized for you without any expert's help, without any other, you just plug and chug. I don't like templates, but today we're talking about startup lists. What happens with a checklist, even if they seem to have put it in some type of order or ranking of of importance or whatever way they arrange the information. Invariably, every single business and every single entrepreneur has something about their business that is very unique to them. There is not one-stop shopping, one-size-fits-all business startup. So when we get these startup kits, invariably you're going to have questions. Invariably you're going to have things that are different for you than the example that they put in the kit. But if they're selling information, they are not in the business of helping you dig in over the weeks and months that you're trying to execute, dig into the specifics and answer your questions and help you to figure out, okay, what's unique about you? Yes, they said do this in this order or in this way, but what about your individual situations? What about when things aren't exactly like they said it was going to be? What do you do then? And that's where you are left hanging with a stack of paper that is worthless, a workbook, an ebook, whatever the thing is. Startup kits, yes, they are so tempting because they will tell you this is all you need to know to do A, B, and C. In this case, to start your boutique. But when you get into it, it's not, like I said, it's all. Think about it. If all we needed was papers, the information, the words, the lists, the data to succeed, why is it that when we go to school, whether it's college, high school, or whatever, why is it that the teachers don't just show up the first day and hand you a textbook and say, good luck, just read this book and you'll know calculus. Just read through this workbook and you'll color all the pictures and you'll be an expert in anatomy and physiology. Why don't they do that? Because every situation is different and there is nuance. That's one of my son's favorite words. He uses it a lot. There are nuances to every situation that cannot just be handled with the written word. And so with these startup kits, you end up being left hanging because when you have differences in your situation, when you have questions, when you have things that go awry, startup kit is not for that. It just gives you this information. Do this, 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 this. And invariably, those kits are not thorough for the very reasons we're talking about, because there are so many eventualities. There are so many incidentals. There are so many what ifs. If you are familiar with, Microsoft Visio, where you can create those flow charts and you have these decision trees where you ask a question. If it's yes, you go this way down the rabbit hole. And if you say no, you go a different way down the rabbit hole. Do you know how massive a startup kit would have to be for it to answer every eventuality? Heck, just dealing with the 50 states in the United States of America, starting a business in each one of those states would need to have their own startup kit. And in each municipality or county, you'd need your own section to the startup kit. And then based on what type of product you're selling in your boutique, you would have different questions to answer and different things you need to do. What you do to start a retail boutique can be different from what you start when you're starting maybe a skincare boutique. And so taking a startup kit and saying, this is all you need to know, pretty much follow this and you're good to go. You don't need an expert to talk to. You don't need anybody to answer your questions. That is a recipe for disaster. That's why I'm speaking against startup kits. In general, is it bad to have information? Not really. But, and this is going to lead into the third thing that we're going to talk about. In addition to leaving you hanging with a bunch of information without knowing the process to execute, having these vendor lists and these startup kits and things of this nature, it cheats the recipe. Now, what am I talking about? I'm glad you asked. When I talk about cheating the recipe, I'm specifically talking about having this startup kit or this list of vendors. And this is really more to the startup kit. Okay, so this is my analogy. I use it all the time. I use it on my coaching calls. I use it in these videos a lot. Starting a business is a lot like following a recipe. So for those of you who are cooks, and even if you can't cook, you should understand this. When you open a cookbook, or even if you find a recipe on a website, right? it's not just a list of ingredients. A recipe is not just a list of ingredients. Now, when you look at a package in the store, you do see ingredients. They have to tell you what's in it so you can know if there's any allergens in it or something that you don't want to eat, right? But you can't reproduce precisely that product, that food product, with just a list of ingredients. You can get darn close, but unless you've actually worked for the company who manufactures that food product, you don't know their recipe, you can't recreate it exactly. Why? Because you are missing some parts of the recipe. In addition to the ingredients, which let you know what to put in the recipe, and then inherently lets you know what not to put, because anything that's not in the list of ingredients does not go in the recipe. You also need to know the quantities. You need to know how much flour, how much vinegar, how much whatever it is that needs to go in there, because 2 cups of flour is very different from 3 cups of flour in a cake. With one, you're going to get a great outcome. With the other, you're going to get a mess, right? You need to know how much of whatever it is you're putting in your dish. But then the third thing, in addition to ingredients in a recipe and the quantities of those ingredients in a recipe, the third thing is the order in which you proceed to put the ingredients together and process them and put them and create the dish, right? Most baked products tell you to do what first? Come on, cooks. When you are making a cake or cookies, what do they tell you to do? Preheat the oven first. So if you create the best batter that you can possibly create, put it in the pan or put it on the baking sheet or whatever it goes in, and then slide that into a cold oven, you are going to have, and then turn it on, you're going to have a very different outcome than if you had preheated the oven as told. Or there are certain recipes, and baking really goes along with this. I think the cake example is going to carry us through. Dry ingredients together, wet ingredients together, and then you add the dry mixture into the wet mixture, and you do it that way. If you do not do that, if you just dump the eggs and the flour and the vanilla and all that in there together, you're going to have a clumpy mess. A good cook knows how to follow that critical path and do things in the right order to get the outcome that they want. Now, I walk through that analogy just so you can see where that applies in business. Because starting a boutique, any kind of business, but in this case, we're talking about a boutique or a shop, is exactly the same as following a recipe. It's not just enough to know the right things to do and only to know some of them, as is in these startup kits. It's also important to know how much of those things to do, because there are certain things that you can do more of or less of and get a very different result in your business. You can also do the right thing, but focus on it too much and still mess up. You can also do the wrong things or do the right things in the wrong order at the wrong time and still end up with a mess. And that's where we go back to what I started out as. When you're starting out in a business, we talked about oversimplifying things in the first step. When you do that, when you're getting a vendor list before you even have properly vetted your idea and put it to the test, you're doing things in out of order. And when you're when you have a startup kit, a list, but you don't have the quantities, and you don't have necessarily the entire procedure in order, and you also don't have the kind of that feedback loop for when things aren't exactly like what's on the list, because you know how that is. You know how it is when you get steps, even when you're assembling something that you bought, and sometimes they give you the instructions for how to assemble it. If anything goes wrong, you're missing a part out of the package, or you tried something, or you're missing a page or something, and you have nobody to ask, you're extremely frustrating. And sometimes you send it back, or you take it back to the store because you can't do it because you did not have the knowledge of the right, if you're missing a page, you don't know what order you're doing things in. Or if you just have one of those awful sets of instructions that don't really tell you the right process, they just kind of throw some stuff out there in general, it's frustrating. The same thing is true of your business. And so if you are out here paying for vendor lists and paying for startup kits when you are still on day one of trying to get your business idea off the ground, I promise you, Coach MJ would not lie to you. You don't need them. You certainly don't need to be paying money for them at that startup stage. You would probably be better suited developing your own vendor list, doing some of your own work. Yes, it can be attractive to let somebody else do your legwork for you. And there are times when you don't need to reinvent the wheel and let somebody else's knowledge benefit you. But this is not one of those situations. And like I said at the very beginning, I know this is going to be controversial. There's people there's nothing wrong with a vendor list, startup kit, whoop, 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 and that's fine. If that's where your heart is, knock yourself out. But for those of you who are trying to do this in the most efficient, time effective, like the shortest path to get to your profitable boutique and experience the success that you want to, so you can leave that 9-to-5 grind as soon as possible, maybe this year, maybe next year. You don't have time to be wasting money or time and energy on things that aren't going to get you where you want to go. And so I'm on here today to try to stop you from wasting time and money that you could better use elsewhere in the early stages on vendor lists and startup kits and all this stuff people out here selling. Because that's the fourth thing I wanted to add. The rest of the story is, and it's kind of related to one of the ones we've already said, but the rest of the story is when you get those documents, those vendor lists, those startup kits, you already kind of know it's not the whole story, but it gives you that false sense of security that you're on the right path. And so then you spend all this time and money trying to develop a shop that doesn't get the traffic. You need to figure out how to get people to go to your website before you spend $2,000 developing a website. You need to know where you want your business to go, what you want your life and your career, your profession, your business life to look like before you can ever know what tools it's going to take to get there. Because those things we're talking about today, those vendor lists and startup kits, those are just tools. Those are tools of the trade that you don't need to be investing your money in. I stand on it. I say it. You can, as Pastor Sharp said, don't call the office. We're not going to do it. We're not buying vendor lists and startup kits. We're going to find an A to Z process that's in the right order, that's step by step on the execution, where you do have access to expert help to answer your questions. So when you have those little variations, when you have those things that crop up that weren't in the document, you can get those answers and know how to pivot to adjust your business. So you have the accountability to keep you on track. And so you have the support so that when things don't go well, and sometimes they won't, that's just business life, you will be able to pivot, get back on track, and keep moving forward. That's what you need to move a business from the idea stage to the day when you become a household name, not a bunch of documents that just amount to a stack of paper. And those things become outdated as soon as you use them, as soon as they print them, as soon as they give them to you, they're outdated. They won't have the new information. And they're going to have a bunch of old stuff that's no longer relevant, but you won't know that until you waste your time reaching out to those people and doing those things because you were depending on somebody else to do something for you that you could actually do for yourself and get much better results. But the bottom line is you need an A to Z process, step by step, in order, but where you can ask questions along the way so you can develop your own doggone vendor list. It's not that hard to do. Like I said, a lot of them are building them off of Google. They haven't done business with these people. They haven't. They saw some names. A lot of these people are selling stuff that they found from somebody else. And you think they vetted it. They've never done business with any of them. I'm not talking about what I think. I'm talking about what I know. And I don't want that to happen to you. So if you are in a place where you're like, MJ, I don't want to waste any more time, any more money on things that are not going to help me get where I want to go. then I invite you to start to treat your business like the retail enterprise that you want it to be, that earns you the 6 or 7 figure revenue stream so that you can walk away from that cubicle prison forever and into the life of your dreams as quickly and as profitably as possible. Then I invite you to reach out and book your breakthrough interview with me right now at melaniehunter.com/chat. Fill out the application that pops up right afterwards, and let's have a conversation. No shade, no judgment. If you've already invested in a list, we don't have to get deep into the weeds about that. What's done is done. But what we can do is position you so you don't do anything else like that necessary. That's not a good use of the limited funds that you might have to fund your business. And then when it comes to startup kits, you don't need a startup kit. You need side-by-side hand-holding support, because there's no document that can give you everything or even most of what you're going to need to start the type of business you're trying to start. Accountability, step-by-step action plans, and a way to get the answers to your questions that you have. But it's going to start with a decision to get on the phone with me. So www.melaniehunter.com/chats right there below. That's how you're going to get onto my calendar. Book a call, put it on your calendar so you don't forget, so you show up ready as the professional future CEO of your own company, who you are. Again, fill out the application and let's get ready to talk, because your business is not going to magically come together just because you wish it, just because you pray about it. Faith without works is dead. You have to put the right step actions behind your faith and your hope, and it starts with getting the right kind of help. So let's have a conversation. melaniehunter.com, that's 2 L's in melaniehunter.com/chat. Book your call and we'll chat soon. It's been my pleasure sharing with you today. I look forward to getting back together with you next week for another informative and transformative training topic. But until then, get on my calendar, because nothing is going to change in your business and in your boutique until you make a change and step out of the fear and into a place of faith and moving forward. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.